Continuing with our synopsis of Romans, today we are looking at chapters 1 through 3. In the first few verses, the Apostle Paul gives the essentials of the gospel. Jesus, who was descended from King David and declared as the Son of God through the resurrection from the dead. And to what purpose? So that the nations themselves would not just believe in the gospel, but that they would be brought to obedience to Jesus Christ. Now, the theme of the letter is found in verses 16 to 17. The Apostle Paul writes, "For I am not ashamed of the gospel. It is the power of God for salvation to everyone who believes, to the Jew first and also to the Greek. For in it the righteousness of God is revealed from faith for faith. As it is written, the righteous shall live by faith." In my previous video, I mentioned that we can learn that the Roman Church was composed of two main groups, the Jewish believers and those primarily of a Greek descent. Here, Paul is stating at the outset that it is through faith that both groups find salvation. I also want to talk about the word faith, since there is a lot of misunderstanding today with this word. People tend to think of it as an intellectual assent or just agreeing about certain facts about who Jesus is. Some even believe it's belief without evidence. Craig Keener has written, "We should note, however, that just as righteousness involves transformation, so the term pistis, that's the Greek word for faith, includes a sense of faithfulness, loyalty, and allegiance, and not simply an intellectual acknowledgement. Genuine dependence on Christ invites genuine loyalty to Him, and not simply reciting a statement about Him as if nothing is truly at stake." In fact, I've been reading a book called Salvation by Allegiance Alone, in which the author makes some very good points, which are aligned with what I've just said. Now, from verses 18 through 32 of chapter 1, Paul lists sinful actions that would deserve the wrath of God. Note that Paul is not introducing something new, for many of these actions met with the disapproval, not just with Jews, but even of the Greeks. Paul is stating that it is correct that such things do deserve the judgment of God. However, in chapter 2, he shifts his attention to those who may assume that they are moral and therefore can act as judges. What this tends to do is to make such people feel self-justified, that they are morally superior to those who are hence immoral. This is particularly true for the Jewish people back then who had the law of Moses and had the tendency to assume that those without the law are automatically under God's judgment. In verses 14 and 15 of chapter 2, Paul talks about the Gentiles, that even though they didn't have the law, they have the law written on their hearts. They know right and wrong based upon their conscience. Now, the problem for both groups is that whether one is a law-abiding religious person or not, we have all failed at one time or another. As Paul sums up in chapter 3, verses 23, all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. But we are all justified through faith in Jesus Christ. Hence, it is not by our own good works, but as a free gift of God's grace are we saved when we put our faith in the work of Jesus Christ, when He died upon the cross, and then justified when He rose again from the dead. So Jesus Christ did the work of salvation for us. And that is good news. No matter what your background is, no matter what you did in the past, God is able to forgive your sins through Jesus Christ. Well, in the next video, I want to explore this topic further as Paul talks about the benefits and the greatness of salvation through Jesus Christ. Thank you for listening, and God bless.